The official report would read catastrophic equipment failure. It would be a lie. The truth was far messier, and it began with the sound of an apex predator being torn in half by a creature the galaxy had dismissed as cannon fodder, a human. The stench of ozone and incinerated metal filled the cramped cockpit of the Azuran Swift. Red lights flashed across my face, reflecting in the indigo blood dripping from a cut on my temple. Outside, the alien jungle of Kalaris pressed in, a suffocating tapestry of bioluminescent flora and unseen things with too many teeth. My ship was dead. My mission was compromised. And my only asset was the hulking, infuriatingly calm human mercenary I'd hired under duress, a man named Wyatt. He was checking the last of his gear, the movements economical, precise. On the spaceport, he'd seemed like just another soldier of fortune. Broad shoulders, a jaw that looked like it was carved from granite, and eyes the color of a storm-tossed sea. I had chosen him for his expendability, a regrettable but necessary calculation. Azuran lives were precious. Human lives were statistically less so. That was the cold, hard logic of command, the logic I was bred to uphold. Now, that logic felt like a fraying thread in a hurricane. "They're close." Wyatt's voice was a low rumble, cutting through the hiss of failing life support. It lacked the deference I was accustomed to. Humans knew their place when addressing an Azuran commander. This one seemed to have missed that lesson. "Hostile contacts?" I asked, my own voice tight with military discipline, betraying none of the fear coiling in my gut. He shook his head, slinging a heavy pulse rifle over his shoulder. "Worse. Predators. This moon is a hunting preserve for a species the locals call Razor Fangs. They're drawn to failing energy signatures, like ours. I had, of course, read the xenobiology reports. Exoskeletons capable of deflecting small arms fire, 6 limbs ending in monomolecular claws, pack hunters with frightening intelligence. The reports had seemed academic then. Now they felt like a eulogy. "An Azuran warrior can handle any indigenous life form," I stated, the words tasting like ash. It was a statement of faith, a creed drilled into me since birth. Wyatt gave me a look I couldn't decipher. It wasn't pity, not quite. It was closer to appraisal. "Good," he said simply. "You take point. I'll cover our 6. The audacity was breathtaking. He was giving me an order. Me, Commander Vele of the 9th Fleet, scion of a family that had served the Azuran hegemony for a dozen generations. Before I could formulate a retort that would peel the skin from his bones, a high-pitched screech echoed through the jungle, a sound of tearing metal and animal rage. Wyatt didn't flinch. "Showtime," he muttered, and then he moved toward the mangled exit ramp and into the glowing twilight, leaving me to follow in the wake of his impossible, infuriating confidence. The plan was simple. Reach the trading outpost on the far side of the valley. Secure new transport. Complete my mission to deliver a data crystal to Ambassador Ildria at the Nexus station. A mission so critical to the future of interspecies relations that my superiors had authorized the hiring of a disposable human escort to ensure deniability. The irony was a bitter pill. 3 of them burst from the undergrowth. They were more terrifying than the reports suggested. Not creatures of flesh, but of living steel and shadow, moving with a liquid grace that defied their size. Their multifaceted eyes locked onto me, identifying the advanced energy signature of my armor, marking me as the primary threat. I opened fire, plasma bolts sizzling against their carapaces, sending sparks into the humid air but doing little to slow their advance. I fell back, my movements precise, tactical, the result of years of relentless training. I dodged a scything claw that would have opened me from throat to navel, fired again, and managed to punch a hole through a weaker joint in one of the creature's limbs. It shrieked and faltered. 1 down, 2 to go. I allowed myself a flicker of pride. Then the second one flanked me. It was impossibly fast. It slammed into me, knocking the rifle from my hands, its immense weight pinning me against the slick trunk of a colossal fungus. Its mandibles, dripping with neurotoxin, clicked inches from my face. I struggled, but the sheer physical power was overwhelming. This was it. This was the ignoble end of Commander Vele. Not in a blaze of glory against a worthy foe, but as food for some backwater predator. I closed my eyes, bracing for the final tearing pain. It never came. Instead, I heard a roar, not from the creature, but from behind it. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage, a sound no human throat should have been able to produce. I opened my eyes just as Wyatt seized the Razor Fang from behind. He wasn't using a weapon. He was using his hands, his bare human hands. Muscles I hadn't known a human could possess bunched and writhed under his worn jacket. He dug his fingers into the seams of the creature's armored back, finding purchase where my plasma rifle had failed. With a guttural shout that seemed to shake the very air, he pulled. There was a hideous, wet, cracking sound like a mountain splitting in two. The Razor Fang's nigh invulnerable exoskeleton fractured, then split wide open. Viscous, iridescent fluid sprayed everywhere, coating Wyatt as he tore the creature in half, dropping the two twitching pieces to the forest floor. He didn't pause. He didn't even look at me. The third Razor Fang, momentarily stunned by the display, charged him. Wyatt met it head-on. He moved with a speed that blurred, sidestepping its lunge and driving his fist straight through its armored head with a sickening crunch. The creature collapsed in a heap, its limbs spasming. For a long moment there was silence, broken only by Wyatt's ragged breathing. He stood amidst the carnage, chest heaving, his hands and arms glistening with the creature's internal fluids. Slowly he turned to face me. The look in his eyes. It wasn't human. The pupils were blown wide, black pits of cold fury. This was something else. Something primal and terrifying. He took a step toward me and I flinched, instinctively scrambling for my lost rifle. "What?" I managed to whisper, my voice trembling for the first time in my adult life. "What are you?" He blinked, and the predatory glaze in his eyes receded, replaced by that familiar stormy gray. He looked down at his hands, then at the dismembered alien bodies, as if surprised to see them there. "Human," he said, his voice raspy, "just a little stronger than average." We made it to the outpost by dawn. It was a wretched collection of prefabricated huts clinging to the edge of a cliff, smelling of stale air and desperation. The single room my contact had secured for us was barely large enough for a cot and a table, an intimacy that was suddenly terrifyingly unwelcome. I watched him clean the alien viscera from his arms, my mind reeling, replaying the scene in the forest over and over. "That's not possible," I said, finally breaking the silence. "Human muscle density and skeletal structure cannot generate that kind of torque. Your bones should have shattered." He continued washing, not looking at me. "Earth is a high-gravity world, Commander. 1.5 standard Gs. Out here, in normal gravity, we get a bit of an advantage." "That was more than a bit of an advantage," I shot back. "That was an aberration. That strength is not a natural evolutionary trait." He finally stopped, turning to face me. He leaned against the wall, crossing his arms over his chest. The movement stretched the fabric of his shirt, revealing surgical scars lacing across his biceps and forearms. Not battle damage, deliberate, systematic modifications. "Project Augment," he said, the words flat, devoid of emotion. "A failed military experiment to create the perfect soldier. They succeeded. Then they tried to bury their success. Only 3 of us got out." The revelation hit me with the force of a physical blow. The galactic consensus on humans, that they were physically weak, useful only for their rapid breeding and adaptability, was a lie. Or at least not the whole truth. A strategically maintained misconception. My own people, the Azuran High Command, used humans as cannon fodder, as scouts, as expendable assets, all based on this fundamental misunderstanding of their physical capabilities. My entire strategic framework was built on a foundation of sand. So your entire species has been hiding its true strength? Not hiding, he corrected, his voice hardening. Just not advertising. There's a difference. Why hand a potential enemy a weapon to use against you? You think if the galaxy knew what we were capable of, they'd hire us as cheap security? Or would they see us as a threat to be neutralized? He was right. And the implications were staggering. I looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time. Not as a disposable tool, but as a weapon of unknown magnitude. And he was my weapon, for now. The data crystal I'm carrying, I said slowly, my tactical mind connecting the pieces. It contains research on cross-species genetic compatibility. Specifically, between humans and Azurans. His steel-gray eyes narrowed. Compatibility? What kind? Viable offspring, I admitted. The words felt strange, forbidden. The research proves our species are far more closely related than our evolutionary paths would suggest. It could form the basis of a powerful new alliance. Or, I added, it could be seen as a threat to racial purity by powerful factions on both sides. Factions who might sabotage a commander's ship to make sure that data never reaches its destination, Wyatt finished for me. Grounding you on a planet known for its lethal wildlife, hoping the problem would take care of itself. The sabotage. Of course, it wasn't random. It was a targeted assassination attempt, and I had walked right into it. But the assassins had made one critical error. They had accounted for the Azuran commander. They hadn't accounted for the human. He pushed off the wall and moved to the small viewport, looking out at the alien landscape. This mission just got a lot more complicated. You're still bound by our contract, I reminded him, though the words felt hollow now. He turned, and a ghost of a smile touched his lips, a humorless, dangerous thing. The contract was to escort an Azuran commander. Looks to me like I'm escorting a fugitive now. That costs extra. For 3 days we were trapped in that room, waiting for the transport. The forced proximity eroded the boundaries of rank and species. He told me about Project Augment, the grueling training, the friends he'd lost to failed procedures, the cold-blooded order to terminate the survivors. He spoke of a government that had made him a monster, then tried to put him down like one. In return, I found myself telling him things I had never spoken aloud. About the rigid, unyielding pressure of my upbringing. About the parents I barely knew, lost in a border skirmish when I was a child. About Elder Thalas, the woman who had trained me, my mentor, the closest thing I had to a mother. We were two soldiers, forged in different fires, betrayed by the very institutions we were sworn to serve. One night, the storm that had been battering the outpost for days reached its peak. Crimson lightning split the sky, casting his face in stark relief. He was tending to the gash on my shoulder, the one from the Razor Fang. His touch was surprisingly gentle, his fingers warm against my cool blue skin. "You're a good soldier, Vele," he said, his voice a low murmur against the drumming of the rain. It wasn't a compliment. It was a statement of fact, a shared understanding. "I was bred to be," I replied, my voice softer than I intended. "And what happens when the cause you were bred for turns out to be a lie?" He finished dressing the wound, his gaze holding mine. In his eyes I saw not a human, not a mercenary, but a reflection of my own disillusionment. The air in the small room grew thick, charged with something more than the storm outside. He was so close. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a stark contrast to the cool discipline of my own people. In Azuran culture, such proximity, such a raw exchange of vulnerability, was unthinkable. But here, light years from home, hunted and betrayed, the old rules seemed irrelevant. His hand moved from my shoulder, tracing the line of my jaw, his calloused thumb brushing against my lips. "Then you find a new cause," he whispered. The kiss was a cataclysm. It was tentative at first, a question asked in a language we were both just learning. Then it deepened, a collision of two worlds, of loneliness and rage and a desperate shared need for connection. It was everything I had been taught was wrong, and everything that felt undeniably right. The genetic research I carried was no longer an abstract concept. It was here, in this room, in the warmth of his lips against mine. A truth so powerful, so dangerous that our governments would kill to keep it buried. In the heart of the storm, I chose my new cause. Not the Azuran hegemony, not some abstract notion of duty, but him. Wyatt. The Nexus station was a glittering jewel of diplomacy and deceit. We arrived on a smuggler's freighter, slipping in through a cargo lane, our faces hidden by hoods. The plan was dangerous. My initial mission was to deliver the crystal to Ambassador Ildrea. But a fragmented, encrypted warning from a source I trusted had changed everything. The mission was a lie. Elder Thalis, my mentor, was part of the conspiracy. I was never meant to deliver the data. I was sent to die with it. "We can't trust anyone," Wyatt had said as we planned our next move. We leaked the data to everyone. The Human Council, the Azuran Council, the Galactic News Network. Let them fight over the truth. We just need to get out alive. The Central Communications Spire was our target, a needle of light and data at the heart of the station. We moved through the crowded concourse separately. I used my commander's credentials, still active, to bypass the first few security checkpoints. But as I approached the diplomatic wing, a voice I knew better than my own stopped me cold. "Commander Vele, I was hoping you'd survive Kalaris." Elder Thalis stood before me, flanked by two imposing Azuran guards. Her face, which I had once revered, was a mask of cold disappointment. "The human thing you brought with you has been apprehended. He is being taken to a research facility. We are very interested to learn what makes him so resilient." Ice flooded my veins. "You betrayed me." "I am saving our species from genetic dilution," she said, her voice devoid of the warmth I remembered. "The research you carry is a plague. Hand it over, child. It is your final duty." My hand moved to the concealed data crystal. For a heartbeat, I considered it. Duty, honor, purity. All the words she had drilled into me. Then I thought of Wyatt, of his touch, of the truth I had discovered in his arms. In one fluid motion, I drew my weapon, not at Thalis, but at the fire suppression system on the ceiling. The corridor instantly filled with a blinding white foam. Alarms blared. Chaos erupted. I ran through the pristine halls of the Nexus, a traitor to my people, a heretic to my faith. My wrist device showed Wyatt's locator signal moving toward the lower docking bays. They were taking him off station. I sprinted through service tunnels, my lungs burning, ignoring the shouts of the guards behind me. I reached the docking bay just as a sleek black shuttle began to power up. 4 guards stood at its ramp. Wyatt was inside. I could feel it. A muffled explosion from within the shuttle rocked the bay. Wyatt was fighting back. That was my opening. I slipped from cover, my stun pistol taking down 2 of the ramp guards before they could react. The other 2 turned, but I was already inside. The shuttle's interior was a war zone. 2 more guards were down. Wyatt stood over them, restraints shattered, a stolen plasma rifle in his hands. Relief washed over his face when he saw me. "Cutting it a little close, aren't you?" "The autopilot is engaging," I said, pointing to the cockpit. "We need to take control." We stormed the cockpit, neutralized the pilot, and Wyatt threw himself into the seat. His hands flew across the controls, a blur of practiced motion. "Ever flown an Azuran stealth shuttle before?" I asked, strapping myself in. "Can't be that different from a human one," he grunted, slamming the thrusters to full. The shuttle screamed out of the docking bay, plasma fire scorching its hull. A squadron of Azuran fighters fell in behind us, their weapons locking on. "They're not going to let us go," I said, my voice grim. "We won't outrun them. Don't have to, Wyatt said, a predator's grin on his face. He pointed to the nav display. Just have to make it to that asteroid field. He piloted the shuttle with a reckless grace, weaving through the tumbling rocks as the fighters struggled to follow. Explosions blossomed behind us as his pursuers misjudged their turns, but they were relentless. A plasma bolt slammed into our rear shields, and the ship shuddered violently. "Hull breach! We're losing atmosphere!" I yelled over the alarms. "The main comms are fried. We can't transmit the data." Wyatt didn't hesitate. He yanked a panel from the console, exposing a tangle of wires. "Then we'll use the emergency broadcast system. It's short range, but it's unencrypted. It'll go to every ship and station in this sector." I connected the crystal, my fingers flying as I bypassed the safety protocols. The data began to upload, a single progress bar crawling across the screen. It was our last desperate gamble. Another blast hit us, and the cockpit went dark, the hum of the engines dying. We were adrift. The fighters closed in for the kill. I watched the upload bar hit 99%. Wyatt grabbed my hand, his grip strong and steady. "Whatever happens," he said, his voice quiet but clear over the dying alarms, "we did this together." I squeezed his hand back, a strange sense of peace settling over me. Together. A blinding white light filled the viewport. This is it, I thought. But it wasn't an explosion. The light resolved into the vast angular shape of a human battlecruiser, its weapon ports blazing, tearing the Azuran fighters apart in a volley of brilliant energy. A voice, calm and professional, crackled over the comms. "Unidentified shuttle, this is Captain Alvarez of the UHS Endurance. We received your broadcast. Stand by for rescue." We stood on the observation deck of the Endurance, watching the stars wheel past. The data was out. The galaxy was in an uproar. Elder Thalas and her conspirators had been arrested for treason. I was a traitor to some, a hero to others. Wyatt stood beside me, his shoulder brushing against mine. "The Human Council is offering us sanctuary," he said. "New identities, a quiet life on some colony world." I looked out at the endless star field, at the infinite possibilities. A quiet life. It sounded peaceful. But it wasn't for us, not yet. "The truth is out," I said. "But people are scared. They'll need someone to show them what this new future could look like." I turned to him, my blue skin catching the starlight. "They'll need proof." He smiled, that slow, genuine smile that crinkled the scar through his eyebrow. He took my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. "We're proof," he said. "You and me. We're what they're afraid of, and we're what they need to see." He was right. We had started a war of ideas, and we had to see it through. No more running. No more hiding. We would face the councils. We would testify. We would be the living embodiment of the truth we had almost died for. Our future was uncertain, a path forged through chaos and rebellion. But as I stood there, his hand in mine, I wasn't afraid. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. We were not just an Azuran and a human. We were the beginning of something new, and the galaxy would just have to get used to it. If you enjoyed this story and want to